Today we are going to build a beautiful herb planter that you can grow anywhere in a porch, patio, townhouse, apartment, or in a big backyard. We're going to use this steel tub to set up the planter, and it shouldn't take us very long. So if you are looking for an easy to do home garden project that'll get you growing some things that you can cut and bring into the kitchen every single day, then this is it. So I just purchased this steel tub. This was from Home Depot, and it's Barron's brand. I love the Barron's brand. I've used it for years. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually start with my hair dryer. So we have the Hot Shot tools helping us out today, and this is just simply to get the label off. So I've tried all kinds of methods before, like a Goo Gone. I've used Goo Gone and soaked it in water, and I found that just putting a lot of heat right on the glue helps it to come up pretty fast. So can you still hear me talking, hopefully? Years ago, I did about 100 of these, small ones, but as a workshop. So we had to find, locate, and set up about 100 of these. So you can imagine how much hair drying we did. But see how that just comes off? I don't know why they put these labels on here. Barron's, if you're watching, we don't need the label. We're good. Put the label on the bottom. But almost all of them come with these very sticky labels. And believe me, if you get that sticky residue left on the container, it is a serious pain to get off. So we're going to get the very end of that glue off. Ta-da! All right, I bet you've never started a gardening project with a hairdryer before. At least, hopefully you haven't done one recently. Okay, so got that done. Now we're going to take the container, and our next step is to add drainage holes. So with herbs like to they like their roots to get wet, but not to stay wet. So drainage is super important, and this one is a tub. It doesn't have any holes. I wanted to do this tool-free. Well, this is a tool, but I wanted to do this power tool-free, so I'm going to attempt to put holes in here just with a Phillips head screwdriver and a very strong DeWalt hammer, and we're going to see if I can do it. If I can't, then I'm going to go get a drill. Okay, I'm trying not to hurt myself here. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get a drill to make this a little bit easier. Hold on one moment. Okay, so that was a fail. So now we're going to resort to my husband's drill. It's just a simple drill. We've had it forever. You want to get a pretty large drill bit. I think that's what this is called, drill bit. Get a large one because you really want some nice large drainage holes. So then you're just going to tighten this thing on, and you do want to be sure it's really nice and tight because you're going to be drilling pretty hard into these. So now that we're using a power tool, we need some safety glasses. So I got mine. So I'm gonna actually, I think part of the problem was I wasn't high enough up on my on this to get some leverage. So I'm gonna try to bend like this. I'm gonna make this hole a little bit bigger, like that, and then I'm gonna keep going around. Okay, that was a lot. So I just decided to do a circle of holes there. I can take these off now. And that's the hardest part of this whole thing that we're about to do. So this does make some pretty scary little bits here. So you do want to be sure that you kind of get them into a little safe spot. So I'm just going to wrap them up in a little bit of this weed barrier cloth, and that's what we're going to use actually next in the project anyway. So I'm going to grab these up here so I can put them in the trash. Because if you have small kids or something like that, and you wouldn't want to have this out in the grass either. So I'm just going to gather these little steel bits up. And now we have plenty of drainage. You don't want it to be just pouring out of the container, obviously, but you do want even drainage. So I think that doing it around in a circle is going to be great. All right, so I got that. Now we're going to flip this over, and we got this nice, beautiful container ready to be filled. So this is what all the holes look like, quite a bit, and it's ready to go. So the next step is going to be to cover the bottom with this weed barrier cloth. So the idea here is just to keep in the soil so it doesn't, the dirt doesn't come out of this container as the plants start to grow and when you water, when it rains, whatever. So you're just going to kind of set it up in here, make sure it covers the whole bottom. And I'm going to double mine up. This is a pretty thin weed barrier cloth. I've had it for quite some time. And this is not the ideal weed barrier cloth cutter, but it's what I have. This is one of my favorite garden tools. It's a needle nose pruner. And I think we have this in the Gardenary shop, hopefully at the time you're watching this. All right, so just like that. So done with that. Now I'm just going to double this over and put this down on the bottom of the container. Let's see. Okay, that's perfect. So you can let it come up the sides, but you don't have to. So I've covered up all the holes. That's the main goal. All right, the next step is to start to mix up our soil blend. I'm going to move these things right here out of our way. Almost drilled my leg there. Hold on. Okay, so we're done with the bed building part. That was really easy, right? So now we're in the bed filling part. So a soil blend that I love that's in my book, Kitchen Garden Revival, is called 103. And it's a mix of topsoil, compost, and sand. So I got all this. I wanted to get all the ingredients at one store for you to make it easy. So I got all these at Home Depot. So they're not all maybe exactly what I would purchase, but it's a good, pretty good sample of what's available at a common hardware store. So what I'm going to do is put in like half of that bag, put that down there. Then I'm going to put in some coarse sand. Coarse sand adds drainage. Most of the herbs we're growing are from the Mediterranean. That's where they originated, and so they really like a sandy soil. So this is just paver sand from Home Depot, from the construction section. So I'm going to put some in there, like that. And then I'll spread that around. And then I'm going to add some compost. So this says it's compost and manure. It doesn't say organic on it, which is a bummer, but we're going to hope for the best. So this is made of basically wood compost, and it says cow and chicken manure. So here we go. Looks pretty woody, to be honest, but we will see. All right, there we go. So I'm going to grab my gloves. Actually, I'll use this hori-hori. And the goal here is just to, oh wow, that's a big hunk of something. I think that might have come from the compost. That's scary. Okay, so we're just going to mix this up. The goal is to get it mixed where it's basically, all three of them are combined so that in any one given scoop, you have a mix of topsoil, compost, and sand. So you can see the mixture really ends up being pretty light, especially once you get that sand in there. Having the compost on top is great because that is the food that the plants are going to need first. And then the topsoil is nice at the bottom because it gives structure for the roots to dig into. So just get my little arm workout here. Looking pretty good. What do you think? It's kind of like cooking, but with dirt. So you just want to be sure, like you saw that, there's just some spots where it's mostly just sand. And you just don't want your plant's roots to be hitting a spot that's just sand. So the 1 and 3 blend, actually the 3 is all about adding a little bit of extra. And so what we're going to add extra in here is some earthworm castings. And that just gives a little bit of extra to the soil and to get the plants growing. So I'm going to go grab some of that. And then we're going to be ready to plant this up. All right, I'm going to top this off just a little bit. It's plenty deep for the herb plants. You can see it's going to be at least a foot deep. Well, maybe I'm not. My goal is to make this not too heavy, so I'm actually just going to leave it like that. Okay, so now on top, I'm just going to put a little bit of earthworm castings all over the top of this soil mix, just like that. And you basically want it just a little top off, just like that. It doesn't need to be a lot, but it's just to give a little bit of extra food to these plants as they get started. Okie dokie. So now it is time for the funnest part, the most fun part, which is planting our herbs. So I have these herbs. I got these honestly all at the grocery store. And every time I'm in the produce section, it's like they know I'm coming. Literally last week I was shopping and I saw the guy was literally putting the plants out while I was shopping. I think they were like, Psh, Nicole Burke is coming through the produce section, bring out the plants. So my husband, every time I come in, he's like, why did you buy more of those? So before I start planting some, I want to start with this basil just because it's such a unique type of plant we're going to put in. But we're going to plant all of them. Basil would actually be your last one that you're going to plant. But because of the nature of this plant and it being so different, I want to plant this one first. Before I do that, though, I'm going to give it just a tiny bit of water. So let me turn on my hose. All right, so I'm just going to water this a little bit because I am about to do a little bit of surgery. So I don't want it to, it's going to get stressed out a little bit. And then we'll use that hose again at the end. So the neat thing about this basil and most annual herbs that you're going to put into your herb garden is it's actually a lot of plants all together. So you can see this root system, how they're all tied together, but they're actually a bunch of individual plants. So we're not going to break them all up, but I did want to show you that when you buy herbs from the store, it's pretty amazing. You think you're just buying one, but you're actually buying 15, 20, something like that. So these little ones I'm going to discard, but the big ones I'm going to be planting. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in because they are going to be pretty fragile right here at the start. So the trick with these is going pretty deep and getting them buried nice and deep. That's going to give them support as they adjust. It's kind of almost like Siamese twins here. Where they've really adjusted to being together. And so you're going to have a little bit of loss through this process. But the good part will be you will end up with much healthier, fuller plants in the long term. All right, so I'm just going to basically plant these almost like a little circle in the center. This is where my annual herbs are going to be. And again, I'm going ahead and kind of sacrificing some of these smaller ones. I know they're probably not going to make the transplant very well. And that allows these bigger ones, honestly, just a couple of basil plants is all you need to get a ton of basil. So it's really more about having a really healthy plant than it is about having so many plants. So that's what we're going for here. All right, almost done. So you can see already I've taken that one basil plant and turned it in already to 1, 2, 3, at least 5, 6 more. So I'm making almost like a little circle here. And I think I'm just going to keep this bunch together and put it all right here in the center. They look a little too tightly planted to separate them out. And I'll just watch this one carefully and see if it struggles. If it does, I'll just cut off the smaller ones. All right, I wanted to do that one first. You could just stop right there and you're gonna have a ton of basil and a lot of success, but we're gonna keep going, y'all. Okay, so next up is this rosemary. This is, I believe, like an upright rosemary, so it's gonna grow like a bush. And we're just gonna put this on the side. So we'll have the basil in the center, and then we'll put this rosemary right here on the side. And I have another rosemary here. This one, I think I neglected it a little bit, but that's okay. She's gonna be all right. That's one great thing about herbs is they can stand up to some neglect. That's why I love herbs for first-time gardeners because they aren't nearly as needy as like annual vegetables. All right, one more rosemary. I love my rosemary, can you tell? So these should grow up as like pretty tall plants around the outside of the garden and should be able to make it through the whole year just in this little pot. You can grow rosemary depending on where you live. You might be able to grow rosemary like year-round outdoors. I know like when I was in Chicago, rosemary would make it like all the way till the fall, like October, November, and then it was done. All right, next up we have some thyme, and thyme is very resilient as well. You can see this one's been a little neglected. That's why I'm very eager to get these into this pot because I know they're going to do so much better in a larger container than in those little tiny containers. So it would be ideal for your soil to be all the way to the top level, but again, I wanted to keep this container actually movable because I may need to bring it inside for a little bit as we get warmed up because there is still a lot of chance of frost here. The rosemary and thyme would probably be okay, but the basil would not at all, like even if it drops, you know, to 50 or so. All right, so we're gonna put this thyme right here. Maybe not 50, maybe like 40, 45. All right, so it's filling up. My hands are dirty, hopefully with soil and not manure. All right, I have kind of a, what shall we call it? A contentious issue here. I have mint. I know if I put mint into this container, it will eventually probably take over the whole thing, but that's a risk I'm gonna take, mostly because I wanna keep this mint alive. Mint will send out runners, so it will create these roots that send out and start new plants. This is actually two plants right here. You can see me, you can tell because of the separate stems. So I'm gonna separate this into two parts. And I'm just gonna chance it that it will work in here for at least a season. What this may become like a year from now or 2 years from now is just one big mint pot. And I'm okay with that. That's gonna be all right. So we'll just see what happens. If you want to keep these herbs for years, then you wanna have mint separately because mint will create definitely, like it'll take over. It is not, it doesn't play well with friends, let's put it that way. So here we have it, this is it. So all I have to do now is water this in and I'm gonna keep this in a sunny spot. So this will actually like persevere indoors, but it definitely needs sunlight to grow. So it'll kind of hang on if it doesn't have a lot of sun, but it does need more sun if you want a lot more leaves. So I'm gonna keep this out whenever it's a sunny day. I'll slide it indoors. Hopefully I might have to get a dolly for this thing. Slide it indoors when it's cooler. And then as soon as we pass frost, this thing can be outside all summer long. You just have to really watch the water in it because it is going to need watering quite often because it will dry out because of that bottom on it. So there you have it. There is a garden project anyone can do. You can keep this almost anywhere and you're going to be growing the most delicious, fresh, organic herbs, and you'll have something to cut and bring into the kitchen every single day for the whole year. Super fun. Tell me in the comments if you have any questions and let me know if you're going to try it. Better yet, if you make this yourself, please send me a picture and let me see what you've created. Thanks so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you next time.